consensus building and working with other people. We need to take time and understand the handshake tradition that Baba was doing. Mimi kama Mluya, salamu ni kitu yetu, ni kitu ya kawaida, huwa tunapenda kusalimiana. Na handshake sio kitu ya kunyima mtu. But if you see, of course, and Baba also ni mwanga kama sisi, kwa hivyo tunapenda salamu. But then if you look at it from now today as a government technician, when I call a government technician, every public policy analyst or policy person and public administrators are government technicians, the people who ensure that government works. You realize the essence of consensus building, collaborative problem solving, and where Baba comes in, he exemplified it because he looked at situations. I'll give you an example. The Gen Zs generally, like last year, the Gen Zs had a great movement. The only one thing they missed out was the collaborative aspect on how you come to leadership. This leaderless thing is that one thing that, for example, has cost them a lot of the gains they got there. Because today, a lot of the leaders they met, they already tore them down. That is why Makore is my younger brother, and deliberately I've always ensured that every young person that shows up on the stage and looks like they can fight, I didn't have mentors. We pick them up and talk to them. Kama wanapenda ama wapendi. And one of those things that happened, look at Makore, for example. He's been totally devastated, not just because now one of the persons he looked up to is dead, but because the people of his generation behaved like we millennials initially, but what they are doing is not different with what we did as millennials. All of us wanted to do things alone. So Makore is down. Hanifa cannot say something, and so many people are following. Morara, on the other day, the last demonstration we did with Morara in town, I remember Morara literally crying because he's like, what do these people want? Remember, you've been with us. We've put in our own money, our own resources, and they're still calling me names at Sagret. And I told him, no, as in over time, you come to realize you need to have a strong heart. It takes a little bit of time. So the spirit of the handshake, I want to call it consensus building as something, as a lesson. By the way, that is the enduring lesson that Raila has taught all of us in politics, and we must embrace it.
Okay, let me hear from the Gen Zs on this issue, and because Arnold has brought it up, and Mukendi and Len, I'll hear from you on this. The art of consensus building, and get your start. Is that where you lost it as we compare this to the lessons that we can learn from Raila Odinga, and considering that that art of consensus building is not static, it's really dynamic and relative as well. Because even as you build that consensus, there are those who will disagree with you, and there are those who will agree with you. Yes. The secret is in finding the majority. But then the question then becomes, is it about what the people like, or is it about what is right? And is that where you lost it as a movement for the Gen Zs, which we now call the Gen Z movement?
The Gen Z movement I don't think they really lost. I mean, the loss is that they would have assumed that they will be placed in positions of power. But most of the things that have been wanted are actually in the minds of politicians who actually know that the citizens can actually hold them into account. But of importance is to understand that our governments are mirrored very closely to how the Roman Republic worked. Now, back then, power was consolidated on a single empire, you know, and they used to have a senate that also used to check that particular power. But the emperor had to make sure that he had to be with the masses. And we have copied that system all the way up to now. And you know, that system is very difficult for an African setup, because an African setup is ideally supposed to be organized within the family, so that if Arnold commits a crime, we do not subject him to the state. It is his family to take responsibility for him first. And you know, the system that we have borrowed from the colonialists, and they did a thorough job. I mean, give credit to white people. When they colonize you, they do it properly.
Yeah, I mean,
give credit where it's due. You know, when they colonized, they did such a proper job. It is very difficult where we are to agree that within the space that we are in, and that's why this idea of consensus building, that is an African Ubuntu system. That didn't come from white people. The idea that he is a brother, not a fellow citizen, that is not a system that was foreign. That was an African setup. And the restraint of the rule of law is that you cannot exceed the limits which the law has set. But back then, the laws were not codified. But we used to understand that there is no boundary there. But if Onsarigo's cows cross this way, in the evening we'll sit to discuss, your cows have come here today. What can we do over a cup of tea? Now, how come with all these laws, consensus is still a problem? Is it that we have been so convinced or so pushed to identify that if he's in power and I am not, I am lost? Or if he's in power, his work is to accumulate a mass and oppress the other person. Which is why I said sometimes I empathize with politicians, because when I look at them, it is not because they don't know what they are doing. The moment you land into parliament, you owe people too many things. Your first agenda cannot be your people. It works and runs. Because today, even if we were to uproot all our members of parliament, government will still run. You know, we might have an election within 90 days, even if we were to uproot the head of state. It is simply a matter of strategy.